Good evening, good citizens. Someone removed my podium. It doesn't matter. I won't need it. You are now 5 days away from celebrating the 4th of July, your most cherished national holiday. And you have invited me here to speak. Why? What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days of the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is a constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham. Your boasted liberty and unholy license, your national greatness, swelling vanity, your sound of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence. Your shout of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy. A thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of the United States at this very hour. You look shocked. Well, good. It is good for me to come in and insult you right after your grand celebration. I heard that you came to hear this speech, and I have given it. Now you have been insulted. Now you can relax. You don't have to look forward to that anymore. Good citizens, I am pleased to be here, and I am glad that you have come to share this evening. I most appreciate your theme, which is Let Freedom Ring. I appreciate it because that is the pattern for my entire life. I am not an educated man. Much of what I say here tonight will be from my own experience. And if I should say something that is contrary to the rules of education, I'd like for you to understand that it is because I have never spent a single day in anyone's school. What little knowledge I have, I stole. I have made something of a life for myself, and I'd like to share that with you. I am a Marylander. I was born on the Eastern Shore in Talbot County, Maryland, in 1818. I don't know the exact date. In fact, for many years I didn't know the correct year of my birth. It was not for a slave to know. I was born into slavery. It sounds so benign to be born into slavery, as if the opposite of that is to be born into freedom, and it's just a thin line. To be born into slavery means that you own nothing, not even yourself, not even your thoughts. When I was born, I didn't even own my mother. My mother took me and held me a couple of times and then kissed me for the last time and passed me to my grandmother who raised me. And she raised me to be 8 years old. And then she took me and passed me to the big house in which I was inducted formally into slavery. Let freedom ring is your theme, and there are three things that I want you to know from that experience of growing up on the Eastern Shore, on Home Hill Farm, right there in St. Michael's. The first is, as I was growing up, I used to hear the old folks talk about being stolen from Africa and brought here, and they talked and taught me about black people and white people. My first conception of race. And the white people were the ones who were to be called master. When I was introduced to master, I learned that the slave could never ask certain questions, one of which was his or her age. The other was to be educated. It was against the law to be educated, to learn to read, to learn to count. I also learned that what was good for the master was bad for the slave, and what was bad for the slave, master was good for the slave. And I learned that in a most hideous way. I remember my aunt, Esther, was a lovely young woman, and she was in love with another slave called Ned. And she and Ned would run around the barn and sneak off and do whatever they did back there. I was too young to find out. I was curious, though. One day, I'm in the barn, and Master's got Esther hanging up by her thumbs. He's got her stretched out so her toes are just touching the ground. He's got her stripped from here all the way down, and he's got a long whip, and he's whipping her and cutting huge gashes on her back. And every time he hits her with a stroke, he says, "I told you to stay away from Ned. You are mine." And he whips her with 39 lashes. Blood is running on top of blood. And I witnessed that experience. The next thing I knew was my Aunt Jenny and her husband ran away. And suddenly I have my whole conception of life. I didn't know who my father was. I was told that my master was my father. So I have no conception of a father. I have a conception of a mother who is absent. I have a conception of a mother who is my grandmother, who takes me and hands me off to the big house. I have a conception of slavery and what that means, and of running away. And out of that, I decided, even at that young age, that someday, if this was slavery, I was going to choose to run away. I heard the freedom bell ringing, even at that young age. Well, I was fortunate. In the big house, Miss Lucretia took a liking to me. It could have been because I was her half-brother. I didn't know that, but she probably did. And she gave me my first pair of pants at 8 years old. What did I wear before that? One long shirt that came down to here on me because I was rather tall, and a bare bottom. And she had me sent to Baltimore. Lucretia was married to Thomas. Lucretia was Aaron Anthony's daughter. Her husband was Thomas Auld. Thomas had a brother, Hugh Auld, that lived in Baltimore, who's married to Sophia. And Lucretia had me sent to Baltimore to work with them, to be the playmate of Tommy, their little boy. Actually, it was to be the play toy of Tommy. When I got to Baltimore, it was a grand place. But Tommy was in school and learning. But I had learned that you don't ask if you're a slave to learn. Except one night, I'm lying on the floor in front of the fire, and Miss Lucretia is sitting there reading from the Bible. And everybody else has gone to bed. And she's reading this beautiful passage. And I turned and I said, "I would love to read that." And she said, "I'll teach you." I thought, very well. And she began to teach me. She taught me the alphabet. She taught me